Alright, welcome to the third Starsector modding tutorial in the series. In this tutorial, I'll give you an overview of how to create a new colony market in the game. This tutorial will be broken into two parts, but use the same project file. First, we will go over creating a completely new market in a new star system. Next, we will go over adding a completely new market to an existing star system in the next video. This will be building on the knowledge you acquired in the previous tutorials, and as before, does not require any Java expertise, even though this tutorial will be completed using exclusively Java code in your base mod plugin. This code is located on GitHub, and you can download it from there and install it yourself. Please see the description. Let's begin. As always, set up your modinfo.json, create your mod plugin class, and implement the onNewGame method. You can use any text editor to do this, but I'll be using Visual Studio Code once again for this video. Next, create a planet as we've done before, and this time assign it a faction ID using the setFaction method. I use the constants reference to do this, but if you prefer, you can use the raw value. In this case, independence, in quotation marks. Many custom factions from other mods will require you to do this. Note that for future if you're interested in custom factions. This is really just a decorative setting for the planet, and it only affects how it appears in-game. Next, we need to create a market. Now we're getting to the nitty-gritty. Use the global getFactory method to get the factory reference for the game. This factory, as it's called, can be used to create various objects in the game. It's actually a very common design pattern for games. You are actually doing computer science right now. Anyway, the important note is with the factory, we create the market by subsequently calling its createMarket method. The shorthand way to do this is written here, global.getFactory.createMarket. The createMarket method takes three parameters. The first is the market ID, which can be anything but must be unique in the entire game. The second is the display name for the market. A common convention is to use the planet name, which we are doing here, but this can also be anything you want. Finally, set the market size. This should be a number from 1 to 10, but I encourage you to experiment and see what happens if you put in 0, -1, or 1000. We're going to set it to 1. Starting markets are always size 3. Next, assign the market to its planet. Call the setMarket method on the planet reference and pass the market reference as its parameter. And then, vice versa, set the market's primary entity to the planet by calling setPrimaryEntity on the market reference and passing it the planet's reference. We'll talk about the market entities in part 2. Next, set the survey level of the planet to be fully explored. You want to do this so you eliminate the unexplored description in the game, especially since a market will prevent the player from actually exploring the planet. This is not strictly required, however, so if you like the in-game effect, by all means go with it. In Starsector, all markets have a tariff of 30%. What you might not know, however, is that this needs to be specified and you can even control it. The next line of code you write does this. Get the tariff's mutable stat reference by calling its getTariff method. Mutable stat is an important class in Starsector that warrants a lot of discussion but is outside the scope of this tutorial. Suffice to say that Starsector doesn't control various values with simple numbers as you might expect. Instead, things like tariffs, ship stats, weapon stats, just about everything in the game really is subject to modifiers. But in order to keep track of the modifiers separately from the original number, it stores everything in the mutable stat class. Think of it like a Dungeons & Dragons character sheet where you have a base number for your attributes, but then you write down your various +1 and -1 bonuses separately for weapons, equipment, permanent effects, spells, etc. Anyway, for now, don't worry too much about it, but know that with the tariff's mutable stat, we are looking to directly set its generator attribute. This is the effective tariff. Give it a decimal number for the percentage you want. We'll give it 0.3 for a 30% tariff. Next, we are going to establish that this market is a real market and call setPlanetConditionMarket only with false as the parameter. This should also not be strictly necessary, but I want to contrast this to the previous tutorial where we passed true for a non-inhabited planet. Now we can add some conditions to the planet that may or may not affect the colony market. In particular though, let's examine the population condition. It may surprise you to know that this condition is not required at all. It is purely decorative. The tradition is to give your market a population tag matching the market size. But if you wanted to make a market in your game that was run solely by robots and had no permanent living residents on it, you could just leave this tag out completely. The next few lines of code are especially important to get in order. First, we should assign a faction to this market. The faction of the planet and the faction of the market are not strictly related. Traditionally, we set the market's faction to be the same as the planet's using the setFactionID method, passing the faction ID as its parameter. The most important thing here is we need to set the market's faction ID before writing the next lines of code. Now that we have, we can assign industries to the market. We'll do this with the industries constants reference, but you can use the raw string values if you prefer, just like with the faction IDs. The most important industry to add is population. That may sound weird, but this is the base population and infrastructure industry that all in-game markets have. This will create demand for supplies and other commodities based on the market's size. It also adds an administrator NPC to the market's comm list. All industries will add various NPCs, by the way, depending on what the industry is. Population isn't strictly required, and I encourage you to experiment and see what happens when your colony market doesn't have it. Next, you should add a spaceport. If you've played Starsector and made a colony in the game, you'll already know what this does and why you want it. Finally, for this colony market, we'll also add an orbital station just so we can see how the game handles that. That's all we'll do for now with this colony. It's going to be pretty bare bones. Once we've added industries, we need to add the submarkets. The submarkets are the actual tabs you click between on the market screen to buy and sell goods and store inventory. Traditionally, all markets have these three submarket tabs: open market, black market, and storage. We'll add them here. The order you add them doesn't matter. You probably want to at least add the open market to all your colony markets, or else you won't be able to buy or sell things here. But hey, experiment and see how it works when there is no submarket. Anyway, that wraps up creating the actual market. It exists, but our work is not complete. Just like with new star systems, we need to make the world aware of it. This is done by registering our market with the sector-wide economy. First, get a reference to the global economy using global.getSector.getEconomy method. At this point, I hope you're starting to intuit how these change methods work. Anyway, assign the return value to an economy API reference. With this reference, call the addMarket method and pass the market reference to the first parameter and then false to the second. The first parameter is obvious. What's the second one? What happens if you pass true? It's really not too important, but I'll tell you anyway. It's called the WithJunkAndChatter flag. It's used in-game to add space junk and audio chatter to your colony. This gets done automatically in-game regardless before we have a chance to even visit the colony, so passing true results in background work. If, however, you were adding a colony in real time before the player's eyes, you could control whether the colony has junk and noise instantly. It's really quite esoteric. Anyway, that's it. Make sure you finish creating your star system itself, and you will now have an actual functional colony market in the game. I'll close with a few remarks about this particular colony and try to expose some balancing issues to consider. You will notice that this colony seems to spawn a large number of procurement contracts, while also buying and selling goods are rather unbalanced. In my opinion, this is quite counterintuitive. Why should such a small colony have high demand for procurement contracts but have terrible prices? Well, my educated guess is that procurement contracts are based on sibling colonies in the same system and what is or is not available from there. Since this colony is alone in its system, it has to import goods from other systems, and since it doesn't produce any for itself, those two factors combine to generate tons of procurement contracts. The poor prices sort of speak to the fact that this colony also doesn't have any industries to generate demand for anything other than supplies. I wish I had a better explanation to offer, but suffice to say that some careful tweaking may be necessary for your colonies in terms of where you place them and what industries you add to them to balance your game. In the meantime, hey, let's have fun with these procurement contracts. Anyway, that concludes part 1 of the market creation tutorial. Thank you for watching.